Hey, what's up, Plus Ultra fam? It's me, Plus Ultraman, and I'm finally ready to continue the most highly requested timeline on my channel. So first off, I've got to give a huge shout out to James Seaver from We the Celestials. I had a lot of trouble with the first draft of this script, and talking it out with James really helped me out. So I'll be linking them down in the description, because they also do My Hero Academia What Ifs. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was a collaboration between me and them pretty soon. I've also got to give a pretty good shout out to you guys, the members of the Plus Ultra fam that encouraged me to take my time and make sure this part came out as quality as possible. So really and truly from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys. Also, with new knowledge about Stain's backstory in the Vigilante manga, I do want to make one retcon to the scenario. The actions of Stendhal are canon in this timeline, and as such, Stain has killed people, contradicting what I stated in part 1. That said, Stain is not the same person, and you'll see what I mean by this later on in the scenario. And with that out of the way, we can get back into the story with our recap. When we last left off, the UA sports vessel had went in a much different way than in canon, with Deku having a much better showing all the way throughout, and coming in 3rd place after a hard-fought 3-man battle with Bakugo and Todoroki. And afterwards, the students began gearing up for their internships. We return to this story now. I did notice some people argue that since Deku already has full Cow, Gran Torino wouldn't offer to train him, and All Might's former sidekick would. But I'm anime only and don't know much about the sidekick. I also think Gran Torino would still want to give Deku some training to refine his one-for-all usage and his combat ability. So if he did, All Might respects him enough to encourage Deku to go ahead and take the offer, because Deku would have a huge amount of offers since he did so well at the sports festival. Now I mentioned that Uraraka had received an offer as well, from Stain and Gunhead, but I'm going to go ahead and have her still train with Gunhead in this timeline. I will say she is even more interested in improving her combat skills because Deku is number 1, stronger in this timeline, and number 2, he's very good at inspiring her, so she would probably come out of the training a much better combatant than in canon. In interest of seeing her improve more than in canon, I think she goes out after her training and maybe buys books on different kinds of combat styles. And because of who she is and how her quirk works, in my opinion, the best style for her to start to study is Aikido. Now Ida ended up receiving an offer from his older brother, who I imagine will be showing him the ropes of how he and his team do hero work and maybe some combat training, so that what happened at the sports vessel could be avoided from now on. Though the interesting part is that I see a bit of tension growing between these two. Tensei is really proud of what Tenya had been able to accomplish, while Tenya continuously puts himself down by making statements along the lines of, "I'll never live up to the legacy our family has set." This actually makes Tensei really upset as he finds this a poor reason to want to be a hero. Yeah, the drive is definitely there, but the conviction doesn't seem strong enough, and it's aimed in the wrong spot. Tenya has to want to be a hero not for himself or for his family, but for others, the people out in the world that needed his help. He actually does mention this, but it just seems like Tenya isn't hearing him in a meaningful way. He decides there's definitely one thing he can do to better demonstrate this, and excuses himself to call in a favor to UA. Endeavor offers to both his son and surprisingly Bakugo. I think he's intrigued seeing as how Bakugo was able to really push Todoroki along with Deku, and that he has a pretty good handle on his explosions, which are similar to an extent to Todoroki's flames. He thinks that the two training together could be extremely beneficial for Shoto, and I think Bakugo and Todoroki accept this offer. Todoroki for the exact same reasons as in canon, and Bakugo because Endeavor is a higher ranked hero than Best Jeanist, and would most likely help him get stronger and get even closer to his goal of surpassing All Might and beating Deku. The problem with this is that Endeavor is still Endeavor, and he really only cares about making Shoto as strong as he possibly can, so Bakugo's development is not a priority for him. He is simply a means to an end, and that really pisses Bakugo off. That said, Bakugo is smart, and I think he would still get something out of this training, which is a new way of moving and fighting based off Endeavor. It works in a super brutal way, where he uses explosions to burn and batter his enemies while grappling them and not letting them go. This could be learned from seeing how Endeavor fights in close range when he teaches Shoto one-on-one, and he could apply these self-taught moves in their sparring. But what's currently happening with Stain is definitely the most interesting. He, after watching Deku's battle with Shinso, even though it's much quicker than in canon, realizes that the kid has an amazing amount of untapped potential, and just might have the same spark that Deku had. He offers to Shinso, and I think the kid takes it. He already didn't get to show off much in Sports Festival, so any offer is much appreciated for him. Now training with Stain here isn't as intensive as what Stain had done with Deku in their 10 months. There just isn't enough time to get Shinso acclimated to a higher level of physical prowess like he did with Deku. So Stain decides he will use their first day of training to show what physical training should consist of from now on. This also has the secondary effect of testing Shinso's will, and after Shinso completes it without complaint, Stain realizes that he made the right choice. He tells Shinso that from now on he would need to do that same physical training daily so he can get stronger. People like them who had quirks that with certain conditions that had to be met to activate them couldn't afford to solely rely on them, and after his loss to Deku, this makes perfect sense to Shinso. With that done, he wanted to use the rest of their time together to teach Shinso the bloodless binding technique, and this is my chance to explain how the technique works in depth, because there has been a lot of confusion about it lately. The first thing is, bloodlust binding doesn't actually involve bloodlust per se. Stain just thought the name sounded pretty cool. He explains that the user needs to have an incredible amount of willpower, as well as a large amount of sadness and pain and other negative emotions to draw on. This is why the technique was so hard to control and apply. For another thing, he had only ever met a few people he thought could probably use the technique: All Might, Midoriya, and possibly Midoriya's classmate with the explosion quirk, but he had too much anger and discord in his mind. There's also the teacher of Class 1A, but that was about it. This means that the technique was very rare and very hard to attain. There was one other person that he thought could maybe do it, but the memory was too hazy. Stain then got a severe headache, which worried Shinso, but it soon passed. He then explains a few more facts about bloodlust binding, like if you were to use it against someone with more willpower than you, you could actually do irreparable damage to your mind and fracture it. There's also the fact that if a person knows you well enough, they could fight through the paralysis. Shinso takes all this in and happily decides to do it all, from the physical training to learning BB, in order to become a real hero. Aside from these, everyone else's internships go about the same, and there is no incident in Hosu City because Stain isn't a hero killer and can't piss off Shigaraki, so no Nomu attack. This also means that Stain isn't inspiring people like Toga or Dabi, at least not yet. After his training with Gran Torino, Deku now has both a more refined battle style and a palpable fear of the old man. Todoroki and Bakugo now have a lot of respect for each other. Bakugo is still kind of a dick to him, but he treats him kind of how he treats Kirishima, and I think Todoroki is a bit more inclined towards teamwork after this. And I think you can improve his cooperation stat by about 0.5 point, as well as giving him a bit more control over his flames at this time. His combat skills in close quarters are still pretty limited, but I think having time to actually train with Endeavor, he might have been able to develop a new skill that we probably won't be able to see for quite a while. Ida's stamina might be a bit deeper, but right now his relationship with his brother is very strained due to the tension between him and Tensei. We can now skip to the practical exams, which have some changes to them. Every match other than Ida and Ojiro versus Power Loader, and Deku and Bakugo versus All Might go about the same. Here, Ida has to go up not against Power Loader, but Ingenium, who had requested to be able to do this with Principal Nezu, saying he knew his brother's biggest weakness and wanted to help him get past it. Ida is caught off guard by this, because how powerful and fast his brother is, as well as being shell-shocked by just not knowing this is going to happen. He comes to the same conclusion that escape is the best option, but Tensei does not allow this, cutting off any escape with his speed and driving them back towards the center of the battlefield. Ingenium then begins to berate Ida, telling him that he isn't fast enough, and if he wanted to go get help, he would need to do it quickly. Tenya wasted too much time thinking because his conviction was not strong enough to simply just move. His biggest problem was he was letting his pride and his family shackle him, and he would never be a hero like that. Those shackles were weighing him down, and the most important thing for a hero was speed. And after this speech, the pro hero takes the two students out, knowing this setback was necessary for Tenya's betterment. Over with Deku and Bakugo, they have a lot more trouble cooperating than in canon. For one, Deku has improved more than in canon, and even though Bakugo could boast having gained something from his training with Endeavor, it still isn't enough for him to feel completely satisfied. Not to mention, Deku is more confident and isn't willing to let Bakugo walk all over him. And even though he's got this confidence, Deku still disagrees with trying to capture All Might over escaping, and the two actually get into a bit of a scuffle. All Might's first attack still breaks them up like in canon, and when he appears to fight Bakugo, Bakugo still makes a stand, trying to use his new style, which All Might notices and remarks that Bakugo had learned a lot from Endeavor, which just makes Bakugo madder because he hadn't learned anything straight from Endeavor, he had to teach himself. Realizing he had to try something, Deku tries to join in on this attack, using full cowl and his improved fighting techniques, but this is relatively ineffective. Meanwhile, All Might realizes that this level of non-cooperation is not only bad for both of these young heroes, but detrimental to Deku as the new symbol of peace. He grabs both of their fists with a sad heart and slams the two together, rendering them unconscious and failing them. Hours after his crushing defeat, Deku wakes up to find All Might and Stain standing over his bed in the infirmary. The two seem to be having a conversation, with Stain slowly growing more and more rowdy, raising his voice at All Might even. The older hero then tells his new sidekick to calm down as he notices Deku finally awake and begins to try and turn this into a learning moment for the young hero. He tells Deku that confidence is great, but he can't be so aggressive that it becomes a detriment to the goal of helping people and cooperating with other heroes. And to his credit, Deku is honestly listening intently and being his normal studious self, but then Stain starts to grow angrier and angrier, yelling at Deku. He basically parrots off what All Might has said, but much more aggressively and erratically. At one point, when Deku tries to reply, Stain actually looks him in the eyes and growls that All Might had made a mistake choosing him to be his successor, and this pisses All Might off. He roars at Stain fiercely to get out. He did not make a mistake, and he would not have anyone telling Deku that he did. He tells Stain to come back when he gets a hold of himself, and Stain storms out. And we see that in one of the infirmary beds, also in the room, Bakugo growls to himself, having heard the entire conversation. Stain enters the bathroom, sweating profusely and looking disheveled. He's panting hard as he's trying to calm himself. He truly didn't even know why he was so mad, and he felt very proud of Deku for all he had accomplished. He was very angry at himself for even yelling at Deku. But something in the back of his mind was just bubbling to the surface and making him madder and madder. He bends down to wash his face and looks up at the mirror, but the face he sees is not his own. With that, Plus Ultra fans, will be leaving this timeline off for now. Has Stendhal resurfaced? What is to come of Bakugo learning of the relationship of Deku and All Might early? How will Ida cope with the lessons from his brother? And are Stain and Deku ever going to be able to bury the hatchet after this? You'll have to stay tuned to find out. Again, thanks so much for being patient with this scenario and for watching. And another big thanks to James Seifer. Be sure to check out my Discord if you want to interact with me and my community a bit more. And you should also follow me on Twitter at almighty_dev. I'm a pretty fun follow. And if you're interested in further supporting the channel, maybe check out my Patreon and see if you want to throw a couple of dollars my way. It's not necessary, but if you can, go ahead and try to. But that does it for me, guys. So as always, go beyond Plus Ultra. I'll see you guys next time.